thank you so much for meeting me and for being interested enough in talking to me about what you're doing. So we have here at Pozitivitatea.ro we have Scott and we have John, and I think that they both can say how they got to Romania and why they are here. You said that you have now the third coming here in Suceava, and it's your first.
Yeah.
What are you doing here? And maybe tell us something a bit about your background.
Sure, great question. So I'll start. We're here with Global Leadership Partners, and we're an NGO, a nonprofit, and we pay our own way to be here, and we donate our time, so we don't charge. But John and I are businessmen from America. I'm from Cincinnati, John's from Nashville, Tennessee. And just to give you perspective on our work, we've got 7 teams out from February to April, visiting 25 cities in 12 countries. Most of them are in Eastern Europe, a little bit in Central Europe, and we've begun to expand into Middle East and Central Asia. And the short story of what we do is we offer training based on leadership, teamwork, emotional intelligence, topic like that, to both students and business people. And we love to give back, and we're motivated by the fact that we believe that the principles that are successful in business, come from deep within. We talk a lot about changing character, and that the character of a person ultimately leads to their behaviors. And we also come from a Christian perspective as believers in Jesus, and believe that He's the one who transforms hearts. We do speak in public universities, so that's a part, Steve, that we want to respect every student, every business person, to say, hey, if you want to have a personal conversation about that, then we do that. But I thought that your positivity group might be interested to know that's an important motivator, right, for us to be here. As far as me, my educational background is finance and accounting, and I worked for Procter & Gamble for 22 years. It's a consumer products company. Some of the famous brands are, Pampers, Ariel, Gillette, Olay, Pantene. And so I was involved in finance and accounting the whole time. Got a chance to see a broad perspective of things going on at P&G. I really loved the fact that the training we got was outstanding there. Just the training, the personal development that was available. And we learned many of the principles that I'm happy to share with students and business people from P&G, from my P&G career. I left there in 2012, and now I'm a consultant. And so I love sitting beside decision makers and helping them plan for growth. With my financial background, sometimes an owner wants to, we call it, run the numbers, see if the plan's going to make sense financially. So I love giving that kind of advice to business owners and managers. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm John Gering. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, currently. Grew up in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky to be precise. And I'm in, I guess you would say, my long second career. I'm with the largest healthcare company in the United States, HCA Healthcare. But I had a 20-year career with Xerox Corporation before then. What actually brought me here was really a couple of things. For a number of years, my wife and I have supported a couple of missionaries here in Romania, and we've had a great relationship with them, and they come over to the United States, and we've cultivated quite a friendship. So that was one reason that really brought me over here. We've talked about Romania so much, and they've invited me so much, and the timing was good, and here I am. The other thing, I had a mission trip in Ukraine a number of years ago, where I essentially did the same thing that Global Leadership Partners does. I met with college students, I met with business people, I talked about leadership, and from the perspective of a Christian and the faith that we have and the beliefs that we had. And it was a good mix. So I'm energized by that, because it takes two things that I'm passionate about and puts them together into one nice package.
In which zone in Ukraine?
Where were you?
In Ukraine.
Oh, in Ukraine. I started in Kiev, and we got on a riverboat. We went down the Dnieper River, all the way to the Black Sea, and we stopped in towns all along the Dnieper River. So the boat would travel at night, and then the next day we would meet at either, for an example, the University of Zaporozhye was one. We met with college students there, and we'd meet with Chamber of Commerce leaders in some cities, students in others, and then we got all the way down to Odessa and went back up and went in the cities that we had missed. So I think we went to 12 different cities in 13 days or something of that nature. Plus I've done other mission trips, medical mission trips in Brazil and Mexico, and so it's just work that I like to do.
You might find this interesting. The founder of Global Leadership Partners, our friend Todd, he was a PhD executive like me, of similar age, and he met a Bulgarian back in Cincinnati who came to his church, brought his family, and he had a commercial cleaning business. And I don't know the circumstances that I think he had to go back to Bulgaria, but he invited Todd to come over. So they sent a church team that was teaching children for, I think, one summer, maybe 2 summers. But certainly then he was invited by his friend to come for a whole year. So P&G granted him a sabbatical, and he was in Dayton, Bulgaria, which is pretty remote, not close to anything, and just really experienced village life. He brought his children, right, and had a great experience. But when he was there, they said, "Oh, you're a big shot P&G executive. Will you come do some teaching?" And so he did teaching in Sofia. And then a business club, asked him, "Come have a breakfast and talk to our business leaders." So that's really how this started, is that Todd started doing this. And he did it by himself for probably, 7 or 8 years. And then he had so many requests for training that he had to invite other people to help him. And that's how we grew. And then personally, I've been doing this since 2017. And I've visited Bulgaria, Albania, Montenegro, Macedonia, Romania. So those are the places that I've touched so far.
So Todd, you said was kind of like a catalyst to...
He's a real visionary. Yeah, he really is. And I respect that about Todd. And, as we continue to grow, frankly, we don't have enough, people with the passion to do this, to meet Todd's growth goals. He would love to see this grow. But he's a pioneer, like pioneer personality, right? He loves to go to new places. And my role, for example, is to continue to maintain relationships in places. So that's why, I've come to Suceava 3 times, right? Keep that going. So.
Have you seen some people improving, let's say, in these 3 times you came here in Suceava?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are the 2 places where we offer help in that way. The first is the seminar, and some people learn a lot. They take notes, they absorb everything. I've been surprised where someone comes up to me, like the next time I come, and they say, "Oh, here's what you said in the seminar. I remember this, and here's the change I made in my life." Last night, we were at a business seminar, and I had a young man come up to me. He said, "I'm Razvan, do you remember me?" And I'm like, "I remember you, but I didn't remember, that was your name." But he said, "We had a mentoring session. We sat down together for 90 minutes. And you told me, to follow my passion, to follow my goal of opening my own software company. And I just wanted to tell you that that's what I've done. I opened my own software company, and I want to thank you for giving me the courage to take that step." So that's pretty rewarding.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. You met with 1, 2, 3, 4 young people.
We each had 2. They were 90-minute sessions.
How did you find them?
You want to start?
Well, I found them to be very energetic. I found them to be very positive. I found them to want to establish their own way. I don't know if it's different here from the United States, but the people I talked to were very interested in being entrepreneurs and starting their own business and using the education and what they can learn, and then the mentoring and from us to get insights of how they could go about that. So I found that unique. I think a lot of U.S. University students look for going more of the corporation route, working for a company, but I found it very interesting that they were very entrepreneur thinking and looking at exactly where they could start their business and what kind of niche they could be in.
Yeah, just to add, I'm encouraged at University Stefan Chamari, right, that we sat down with Carmen Nastase, who's the Dean of the School of Economics, and talked also to the rector about they have this innovation program that's coming up, and they're getting grants for entrepreneurs to get small amounts of funds to try out their new businesses. Very, very cool. So just little examples, right? Like I had two young men who were cousins for my first mentoring session, and the one had done a lot of the work and travel, so he had some foreign travel experience, which was fun. But I think the focus of it was helping them think through, these are my skills, this is what I'm good at, and what might be opportunities for me. And so it felt kind of like career guidance, right? If that makes sense. And then in contrast, the next young man that I had was pretty clear what he wanted to do. And he had written out 9 questions for me, right? And he introduced himself. Here's my name. Here's where I'm from. Here's what I want to talk about. So some students come maybe, I wouldn't say unprepared, they don't know what to expect. And others want to maximize their time with us. And I also find that a very common topic is personal discipline. We live in a distracted age, right? And these kids are going, I want to be successful in my studies, and when I get my first job, I want to be successful, but it's hard to focus, right? So we talked yesterday a lot about smartphones and the distraction of YouTube that gives you custom content that you could just go on forever, watching it and setting some boundaries and stuff like that.
Like a drug.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, in fact, I brought that up because I read an article about how the big social media apps. I mean, it's an addiction business model essentially. And so I think it was well received just to go, that's an area I can improve, right? But I try to give really practical tips like that too. So it's daily life. How can that improve? It's fun.
I thought in addition to that, I had students asking me about how do you go about building relationships, which is interesting because in the United States, what we've found is that young people, millennials and Gen Xers, we anticipated that they would not be looking to come into a company and be part of a group and part of a work group, that they would rather work digitally. And what we're finding there is what I've picked up from these young students here. They're looking forward to building relationships. They're looking forward to collegiality for maybe another question, and wanting to know how to build those relationships with individuals, not only in the communities they're trying to pursue their careers, but to establish networks and people that will help them along the way.
Do you think maybe you've also noticed about YouTube, like you can get it on and on without stopping?
Feed forever. Yeah.
Exactly. Do you think that maybe we can find a way to help those that can stop while doing this? I mean, some of the guys while watching YouTube or Facebook or Instagram are right. They know how to stop. Some of them put some plugins for stopping also. But what about those? And I believe there are many people people that just can't stop. Can we help those?
Well, when I talk to these people, I say, there's varying levels of lack of self-discipline. Some people have none, some people have some people have a lot. So you go along a real continuum. And what I talk to them about, depending on where you are in that continuum, if you're in the far end and you have very little self-discipline, really the only thing that you can do is be very disciplined in planning your day and allow this time and only this much time to do this activity and then this activity and then this activity and this activity. Research tells us it takes about 6 months to take a desire and make it a habit. So if you can find yourself to follow a disciplined schedule for a period of time, and it might have to force yourself and to be able to do that, but at some point in time it becomes a routine habit, and you find that without even realizing I was a very undisciplined person, now I'm disciplined as a matter of routine.
So you can force it, making a habit out of it.
Sure. And I think the other thing I talk about is having a relationship, have an accountability group. We speak a lot about that in the United States, is to have a group of people, that share a common interest, and you hold each other accountable. And you give each other feedback when you're outside of what you want to do, and what you're trying to accomplish is another helping you through that. And intervention is very important.
This is kind of like a real problem. It's I'm thinking
it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like AA. Trying to help.
Sure.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Is that, if you're painting a picture of extreme addiction, it's no different than addiction to alcohol or pornography or anything else that, it's that same effect that it's just drawing you in and you can't get out. So that may take clinical counseling, right? That may take therapy. And there are a lot of folks in the States who, when you have an addictive personality, sometimes it's a single thing, but it could be multiple things, and you've got to get help, right? Let's assume it's not clinical counseling worthy. It's not that much of an addictive personality. It's habits and patterns. I'm an athlete, and I train based on a plan and a schedule. And if you get off of that, if you stop doing that, right, pretty soon you're not training at all. And so, especially for men and women who resonate with sport or understand sport, I say, train yourself to not be addicted, right? To not habitually go to the social media like you would when you're training for football or gymnastics or anything else. So that's a good analogy to me, training.
How many years have you trained? Since when did you start?
That's easy, 2003. 17 years.
Okay.
I'm hoping to make it to 20.
What got you to doing this?
I had a health crisis. Yeah. So sciatica, which is a pinched, what's the stuff between your vertebrae? I don't know.
Disc.
I'm no medical guy.
Pinched disc.
Okay, thank you. It's funny, the doctor said, when you're of a certain age, where that material gets less flexible, it gets more stiff, it can create this pinched nerve down one of your legs. It was dramatic. Nothing would make it go away, right? And I went to the doctor and he said, I'm giving you a sheet of paper with core exercises. So strengthen your stomach, strengthen your back. And oh, by the way, you could afford to lose 10 pounds. Well, I was 89 kilos and I'm 173 centimeters tall. That's not a good place to be. And at the same time, I had a guy at work who challenged me. He said, you're eating all the wrong stuff. Too many carbs like potatoes and rice and things. You need more vegetables. Cut down on that stuff. And by the way, how would you like to do a marathon with me? That's inconceivable. What are you talking about? So this was like 2000. Okay. But we started to train together for a marathon, and by 2002 I did a marathon. And I said, oh, that's too much running for me. And I'd always thought about triathlon, which is what I do. Swim, bike, run. So I did my first one in 2003, loved it. I did kind of short stuff, then medium stuff up to about 2009, and then I signed up for Ironman in 2010. So now I've done 4 of those. And I hope to go 3-4 more years before I'm finished.
I believe once you started doing this, it's kind of you can't really do without it. You can't stop.
Steve is telling me I'm an addict.
Well, I think it's
He's
like
being
anything else
very
you develop.
gracious.
You have a bad habit, and you
You can have a good habit.
and then you can turn that to a good habit. So, but it wasn't easy. I'm sure you would say it wasn't easy to start that way, but now it's kind of second nature.
It's interesting. I learned about myself that I like, you have a different version of obedience, right?
Yeah.
But I like following a plan, right? I'm a planner and I like following a plan. It's weird and I almost get satisfaction from, this was my plan for the week and I accomplished it, right? The other is I'm into all the digital stuff, so I have this Garmin, 920 XT, so it gives you files and data on your run and bike, and so I'm an analyst by nature. I love to analyze that stuff. And then there is the endorphin part, right? The biological part of it. It's fun to get out there and do that, but I have to admit, I think I like the process of planning and executing as much as I like the racing and the competition.
You should try tomorrow morning. If you want, I may get you running where I live in Mitoko Dragomir, in Java. Really fresh air.
Yeah.
And lots of deers. I have one place.
I don't want them to jump on me.
Not really. No.
There's not that many.
They're 30, 40, but they're like really curious. They're not coming so close, but you may see them like 50 meters, 100 meters.
Yeah, I bet it's a beautiful spot. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay. What do you think what you're doing can get to the world? Like the things you're trying to transmit.
Yeah.
Do you think that like giving pluses, you'll get pluses? Or do you think like trying to improve others will get the whole humanity better?
So let me make sure I understand. Are you trying to understand what do we get out of it?
So not necessarily
Like our motivation or... Yeah.
Well, it starts with what do you think your purpose is? Okay, and if you'd asked me when I was a young person what my purpose is, I probably would have sat here and fumbled a bunch of gibberish. Okay, so what I really started to understand about purpose, I got out of the Bible. When God created man, what did He do with him? His purpose was to have fellowship with Him. They walked in the garden until the fall of man. So it really starts there. That God created man to have a fellowship with, and that's what He looks for us every day. To commune with Him, and we do that through prayer time. We do that through worship. We do that through service. Is the way we build and maintain a relationship with our God, and knowing that He gave us such gifts. And as I've said a number of times, there's nothing special about me. There's nothing special I do. But I've had a very fortunate career, and I consider it all a gift that was given me. So to serve my Lord is really to give a gift back. And I would say even more than that, I think there's certainly pieces of Scripture that have made such a difference with me. I mean, when I look at what does God require from us, and He said that in Micah in the Bible, and He said, I got 3 things for you: act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your Lord. And you always sit there and think about God. We try and make this so overly complicated. And God didn't want to try and overcomplicate anything. He wanted to keep it very simple. Very simple for us. But He knew we were flawed. He knew we were flawed, but we had to be flawed so that we would choose. but He made a way for us. Made a way for us in Jesus Christ. So with all of that great gift, it's a privilege and an honor and a pleasure to give back something that was given to us.
As a child, I did not come from a religious family at all, so I had no religious background. And my dad sent me to a Bible camp where I encountered a very simple story. God loves me, and the proof is in sending Jesus to the cross. And then He rose from the dead, and His resurrection proves that there's power to overcome the enemy, which is death. And then to give me new life, to power to live every day, a good life. And then that can extend into eternity. I had never heard such a thing. And so being loved that way and being considered special, right, by God was just an amazing transformation for me as a child. However, I kind of got very career-minded, very family-minded, even, and it may sound weird, like doing good-minded, ministry-minded, you might say, in the church. And then I realized that what I was really chasing was sort of respect, reputation, building kind of a life that became time, interestingly enough, that I started to train for triathlon, that I realized that I was using those things as my motivation, as my power, instead of relying on God. And the reason that makes a difference is that I found those things I described to you as dissatisfying. My wife and I sat in the kitchen and said, where's the joy in our life, right? Where's that deep, satisfying joy? And he taught me that even respectably chasing money, power, relationships, it didn't work for me. It didn't work for my life. And so he had to teach me over again to find joy in Him. And it's really just as John described that, it says in the Bible, we love because He first loved us. And so the power I have to love others, the power I have to serve, is because I know that I'm loved, and that creates peace, right? The Jews call it shalom, right? Nothing broken, nothing missing. And so I operate from a place of peace. When troubles come, the anxieties come, suffering comes. But it's not because I'm anything special, like John's saying. It's because I feel like I've gotten that peace from God. And then I think of it as a flow, right? So being given from God and then sharing with others. It's interesting you asked about saving humanity. I'm not even capable of saving one person. But I'm capable of sharing what God's done for me. And it's up to Him, right, to receive that or not, him or her. And perhaps for God to show them something like He showed to me. And then again, you probably have a pretty diverse audience, and so, this is John and I's perspective that we get from the Bible. And I want to say that, from my perspective, Christianity is the most kind of diverse and global, faith that there is. There are people from every nation, from every tribe, all across the globe who are Christ followers. And it really comes down to an invitation, and that invitation is wide open to anyone. So one of the things I like, and it's a tension in our world, right? Exclusivity versus inclusivity, is that it's an inclusive faith. But it is a desire. An invitation. And there's a teacher I follow who goes, God will only send you flowers and send you cards for so long, and He's not going to make you, love Him. And so I think that's an important perspective to share for an audience who may go, these two Christian guys. So,
another thing we're focused on in the world that we live in is the pressure on young people. The pressure, and I'm especially talking about high school. We come from a very nice place, a wonderful place to live, and we find that a vast majority of our high school students suffer from anxiety, some type of anxiety disorder. We're finding that the pressure for a young person to find friends, to be accepted, to find their future, to find their direction is just kind of overwhelming. And I don't know if it comes, I'm sure it comes from age, but it really comes from, a biblical understanding that my life is not defined by anybody else other than Jesus Christ going to the cross for me. That's all it is. So all the other pressures of the world go away, because my life is not defined by anybody else. And I've always just been awestruck by the fact that if it only been for me, Jesus would have still gone to the cross, if just for me.
When did you, each one of you, got this revelation to this point? You said about like 2003. Also, when you got to
when I was 12 years old, right, was first, and I talked about the simple love, which comes down to God loves me, and what Jesus did proves it, right? But then, like any of us, we develop patterns, we develop habits. We were talking about that, and I can tell what's important to you, Steve, by how you spend your time. If I really looked at my life in the early 2000s, it was about career, right? It was about family. It really was about doing good in ministry. But as I explained, the revelation then was, hey, even doing that in a respectable way, those are substitutes for true love. I can't use those as a God substitute. And so, that was 2003 for me.
Mine's a little bit different. I was raised in a very Christian home. I can never remember a time when I didn't know that Jesus was my Lord and Savior. From the very beginning of my life, we were very involved in church. My father was very involved in service in the church. We were at the church. We participated in the church. I went to a church school. So I was pretty much dipped and drip dried in church and Jesus. But I can loosely say it's different when you are part of it growing up as a child, and then you get to that point where you're mature enough to understand exactly what it all means. And that came much later in my life, about understanding the true awesomeness of what God did for us through His love, to study what He tells us in the Bible and the principles of the Bible and how He reveals Himself. That came much later in life. And I had somebody tell me, and I think that's where I am right now, is that once the way you really know about yourself and Jesus is, I can't stop learning enough about Him. And that's the point where you know that you understand the awesomeness of what God did and what Jesus did. And that's kind of where I am. I can't get enough. I can't get enough preaching during the week. I can't get enough Bible study. I get mad at myself when I have to do something else and I can't do those kinds of things. And I think that's where I am. And that came along later.
So it's like the way you got to feel doing this got you more energetic, and this is how you got to doing what you are now doing, for the others.
What's really interesting for me, I've been a manager of people for a very long time. 40 years I've been in leadership. When I first started learning about leadership, it was in the late 70s. And the reality of it is, what made up a good leader then is the same thing that makes up a good leader now. the principles of engaging people, the principles of collaboration, the principles of setting vision for a group of employees, the principle of empowering your employees. All those same principles we talk about every day today, the same principles we had 40 years ago. So it basically says people are the same. Okay, leading people is the same. The people might have changed, but the principles of which motivate people and guide people haven't changed at all.
So, for me, I think I did what I expect many people do, which is think about circumstances as what will fulfill me. And I think the three obvious ones you've heard me say, which is money, power, relationships. And I think we can be serial junkies of chasing those things. And I think many people, what they do is they try to change their situation, right? They try to change their circumstance in order to grow. Even if they can't, they maybe dream of a different circumstance, and even that gives them comfort, maybe gives them hope. If only I had a different girlfriend, right? If only I changed wives, if only I could get into a different career situation. I was and have been faithful to my wife. I was respectable career. From all appearances, right? It would say, oh, okay, this is a good man. But I think I had absorbed that mentality of it's really about your situation and trying to get that to satisfy you. So for me, I don't use the word energy. I'd use rest, so being at peace. I said that. And then also almost delinking me from situations, not chasing a change in situation, but focusing on a change in myself. So we talked about character in the training, right? And being a student of myself, being able to examine myself, and ultimately seeing a lot of selfishness. And the Bible talks about selfishness as being a form of slavery. Who's your master? You. I was a terrible master, okay? Instead, being relieved from that and also releasing my wife, my kids, my career from having to, I call it come through for me, satisfy me. Wow, and once I did that then, right, I'm not looking at my situation in a self-focused way. I'm cared for by God, so now it releases me to focus on others, which is what I talked about in the session. Leadership is about others, but if we're constantly examining ourselves and our situation and trying to get that to create peace, it's a barrier to being good leaders. It's a barrier to being others focused. And I really needed to be released from that slavery to self. I don't know if you know, what's the guy? Bob Dylan. Have you ever heard of Bob Dylan? Yeah? Do you know his song, You're Gonna Serve Somebody? That's it. You're gonna serve somebody. And I think most people serve themselves. Honestly, I think Western culture teaches us to serve ourselves. But it's kind of a dead end. I think Dylan talks about that. And instead, I'd rather be a servant of Christ and the freedom that comes with that.
I believe most of the singers, the great singers, got to one point where I try to transmit something different, something better. Thinking about Beatles, they had Let It Be. Thinking about Metallica, nothing else matters. Thinking about there are so many.
Musicians shape our culture, don't they? Yeah. And through music, we get a lot of our deepest messages. And I think you're exactly right.
Or the one that I also really enjoy, One Love from Bob Marley.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Most of them had many mistakes. But I'm thinking like once they kind of...
And many of the songs are about partying, girls and drugs, but there's that. But you're right, there are a lot of heartfelt songs.
Well, in Nashville, every song has a pickup truck in it, has a broken heart in it, and a lot of beer, and that's kind of where it all starts in Nashville, Tennessee.
Some argue there's only one country music song in America.
Yeah.
Because it's always about the same thing.
Right. That's exactly
It's always about a pickup truck, a girlfriend, beer, and maybe a dog.
Yeah, maybe a dog. Somewhere in there.
So no money there?
They make a lot of money when they sing those songs.
So you have to understand, their target market don't have any money. They do have a pickup truck, a girlfriend, and beer.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
And they like Donald Trump. Okay, now I introduced it. I thought he'd be the one to introduce it.
What?
Please.
What do I think about Donald Trump?
Not necessarily.
Not yet.
Not yet.
That's one of our...
What about the differences? Do we still have?
Yeah, you're okay. We can go a little bit over. Yeah, thank you.
What about differences? Thinking about Romania and the US and the way you've seen it, let's say for a little while.
Yeah. First impressions.
I would say, and I've been in not with a GLP, but I've traveled all over Europe, and we do have business in England, so I'm over there often enough, and I find that there's more similarities than there are differences. I really do. I find that, in America, maybe we have a higher sense of urgency, to get things done quickly, and it's faster pace. But I think the issues that they deal with here and the issues we deal with there, and the differences and the conflicts and personalities and philosophies and belief, I really don't find a lot different, quite honestly. I think we're, as a global people, there's a lot more things that are similar about us than there are differences.
A difference that we talked about in the training, which I think can be pretty dramatic, is a culture of trust versus a culture of distrust. Especially as I work with the business people, I really feel that sense of when we talk about building a culture of trust, right, and based on the three pillars you heard: humility, integrity, compassion. The response is, I see it, but I see it up there, and we're here. And so we want to journey there, but we're afraid, right? Last night, the business people were challenged by a couple Romanian, businessmen to take smart risks on trusting other people. But the folks were admitting, we have to admit it's just scary for us because we've been burned, right? And we have a culture, we have a long way to go to kind of be where America is in that kind of trust and empowerment culture. So I think Romania wants to get there, but there's still a road to travel, to get there, and so it feels aspirational.
It's kind of a fear of investing long term, any kind of investment.
I think that's part of it, right? The immigration out of Romania may be that if I invest in young people, that'll just equip them to go to Germany or UK, right? So there's maybe some of that. But I think it's fundamentally, I don't assume that people will be honest. I don't assume that people will be trustworthy or responsible. And you're going to know better than us the DNA that got us there over 60, 80, 90 years, and so I think that DNA got into the Romanian culture over that long. I hope it doesn't take as long to come out.
Yeah, on the subject of trust, I find that it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're of the mindset that I'm not going to trust you until you prove trust, okay, which is just another way of saying I don't trust you now, all right, then that's what you're going to get. Because that person will pick that up and they'll behave in a way that says, well, you don't trust me, so we don't have the relationship. But if you're a person that grants trust and expresses trust to start with, that's also a self-fulfilling prophecy that works to your favor, because it translates to that person that you believe in them, you have confidence in them, they're reliable, they're dependable, you can put your business in their hands, and they respond accordingly. So, those principles absolutely work. When you see all the best businesses that we deal with in the United States, they all have one thing in common. They're very empowering. They grant their employees a lot of empowerment. They allow their employees to make very significant on-the-spot decisions to satisfy a customer. And that power is given to them. And they respond, and they're considered some of the best companies in the United States.
Just a quick story. So when I was helping John get prepared for his talk last night, we were talking about controlling and hierarchical bosses. I said, in HCA Healthcare, how do you guys work with a controlling and hierarchical boss? And he basically said, if they're not willing to change, we fire them.
Yeah.
Period. I was like, wow, really?
Yeah.
And that tells you how dramatic the difference is, right?
Yeah.
We're training managers to be thinking about those below them, and their job is to make them develop and grow and give them responsibility. He's like, yeah, we fire them.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that we have to do it a lot. But I think when you're trying to create a culture of empowerment, and especially in the healthcare business, which we are, and the patient is everybody's focus, you have to have empowered people at the patient level, because a lot of times you're having to make, snap decisions, and a lot of times it is life or death. So you have to have an empowered, confident workforce. And you can't have a workforce that feels like somebody is watching over them and they have to check with somebody before they can do something. Then you might as well not even be in the business.
And where I'm encouraged is that, by the way, when we talk to young people, they go, oh yeah, let's blame the bosses, right? That's what they want to do. But I'm encouraged, I think, that the young people we talk to, and that includes young business people, they get this. And we're encouraging them, don't do it alone, right? Make community. Figure out how to create community that believes in this, because eventually the old bosses are going to die, and you guys will be the bosses. And the key question is, are you really going to embrace this, or might the system change you, right, once you actually have a position of authority? I'm hopeful that perhaps they will, and so that's very encouraging to me.
It's like really nice talking to you. All the things and all the things you're prepared to share, that's quite a lot. Now I was thinking, you being a little bit tired, we can get to the nice question I told you.
Oh, what's the meaning of life?
One second.
Does your blog community know how tough you are? Yeah. They know. They're always waiting.
The meaning of life. When you think about, and again, I think we've established well who we believe and what we believe. And you think about the God we serve, who created the universe, all right? And you think about what we're able to see in the universe today, I believe is 296 million light years out. That's what we have the technology to understand. And we have a God that sits above all of that. He sits above all what we know about and all that we don't know about it. And He created everything. So a God that powerful could make everybody be exactly like He wanted to. He could make us all behave good. He could make us all be kind. He could make us all be generous. He could make us all be loving. He could make us any God that can do that. But He did it a different way. He did it a different way. He gave us the ability to choose Him or to not choose Him. So that's answer number one. What's our purpose in life? Is to choose Him. And if that's your makeup and that's your desire and you realize what He's done for you, you're anxious to serve. So when you serve, you're effectively giving him the glory for what he did and the way that he did it, because it is miraculous by any standard. And there's a passage, it's the 33rd chapter of Job, where Job was trying to challenge God on a few questions, and God quickly put him in his place. He said, wait a second, okay? Where were you when I created you? Where were you when I created all the animals? Where were you when I created all the heavens? And what God's point was, if I hadn't done anything to you, I'm worthy of praise because I did all of this, okay? Man can't do this. God did all of this. So he is worthy of praise, and he is worthy of glory for what he does. And the fact that he loves us so much, and I'm, again, I'm not deserving of the love, but I get it anyway. That's our purpose.
I'll key off the word that John used, which is glory. I imagine you had a lot of people answer this question, and I think many, it might be, kind of get glory, however they define that for themselves. And, I would define it differently, which is give glory. So I think my purpose is to give glory to God. And when I explained my journey, in that context, I was a glory thief. I was taking glory for myself, right, in everything that I was doing. And in Psalm 19:1, it says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the earth reflects his handiwork. But it's not only the creation that can declare that God is the glorious one, but I think we as human beings can too. So just like John said, connecting our lives to God brings him glory. And how, I think, has been best expressed by a pastor that I follow. His name is John Piper. And he says, God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in him. So why is that the case? Because if we're at peace, right, shalom, if we feel like we have the power to be kind, to love, to be others focused, it makes him look good because we acknowledge it's a gift we receive from him. And if he's the one who's made a person effective and at peace and content and loving and kind, he gets all the credit, right? I don't get any of the credit. And so, simply said, my purpose is to bring glory to God and enjoy him forever.
That's cool. This is a thing I believe that gets you going and doing all that you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't see, if you didn't have that kind of inner purpose, in my mind, I don't know how you get out of bed in the morning. If you didn't have the joy of Christ, and the love of God to make you feel good about getting up in the morning, because it's all about hope, and the world is filled with so many hopeless people. And I sit there and I say, gosh, you just don't have to be hopeless. That was never God's intent that any of his people be hopeless, all right? And he's there for the taking. In fact, in Isaiah in 2 Corinthians, he says, no eye has seen, no heart has known, no mind has known the riches that God is willing to put out for the man who loves him. And that's just, we've got a God that's just waiting on us to reach out to him.
Cool.